Good day, everyone. So we are now on the third chapter of our course, which is on the reproductive physiology of dairy animals. So we will be talking here about the different parts and functions of the reproductive system of the dairy animal. So basically, since dairy, we will be focusing only on the reproductive system of females. Although there are three dairy animals that are being covered here in our course, but I will certainly discuss in general since the same lang din naman ang mga functions ng mga to. Okay? So they just vary on the structure and sizes, but the functions, same lang sila. So, okay, so why do we need to study the reproductive system of farm animals, especially in the dairy? What do you think is the importance? So basically, this is important in the isang pinaka-common is in the production of springs. Ito yung kumbaga one of the basic functions nito. And also for the survival of the different species of farm animals. Because in order for a species to thrive, it must be able to reproduce itself para di mag-go beyond extinction, and also for the improvement of breeding management para mas better or mas improve yung characteristics genetically for the specific breed of animal. However, producing offsprings requires mainly proper or functional both for the female and male reproductive systems, of which this consists of several parts that have specific purposes in the system. And if you will try to analyze it, reproduction is the first and most important requisite of successful dairy production. Because, bakit kaya? Because, as simply stated, and if you try to think about it, milk production is a byproduct of the reproductive process. So yung milk yung pinaka byproduct ng reproductive process natin. Kaya kailangan understanding the reproductive function first requires an understanding of the female reproductive anatomy as being shown in the upper right corner. So this is the position of the reproductive tract in a dairy cow, and on this side, this is the visualization of the reproductive tract of the cow with the bladder beneath, and then the rectum and large intestine above. So going back on my discussion, the reproductive function in the dairy cow involves interplay among the ovary, uterus, hypothalamus, and pituitary gland, primarily through the reproductive hormones that I will talk about later on. And if any of these tissues will fail to communicate effectively with the others, basically, then that would be the time that infertility will occur. Now, to give you an outline for the different parts of the female reproductive system of a dairy animal, we have the following: the ovaries, ovaries, oviducts, uterus, which is composed primarily with three: the uterine horn, the uterine body, and then the cervix, then vagina, and the vulva. So let's try to discuss one by one. First, we have the ovaries. So the ovaries are considered to be the primary reproductive organs in the female animal. So this is in general function. It is the primary one because the main functions of the ovaries is for the development, storage, and release of the female sex cells or the female gametes, which are the eggs or ova, and definitely the sex hormones. So if you will try to recall the female sex hormones na na-discuss ninyo noong mga nasa Ansay 20 pa lang kayo, ano na ulit yun? So we have merong dalawa na sex hormones. We have the estrogen and then the progesterone. So if naaalala nyo pa, the estrogen is secreted by the follicles. dito sa ovary. While yung progesterone, these are secreted by the corpus luteum. So ano na ulit yung corpus luteum? So this is a body that develops from a follicle that has released already the ovum. So ulitin ko, pag estrogen ang napoproduce, the main producer are the follicles, specifically the Graafian follicles. Then if progesterone naman, it is the corpus luteum that produces it. So kung nakikita ninyo dito, sa lower right corner of the slide, the corpus luteum is the round orange structure at the bottom of the picture. So malaki ang role kasi, malaki yung role ni corpus luteum. Kasi basically, if pregnancy is established after ovulation, the corpus luteum will remain for the duration of the pregnancy, which produces yung progesterone, as I have said kanina, which is an important hormone for the maintenance of pregnancy sa mga animals natin. But if pregnancy of the animal is not established, yung mga hormonal signals from the uterus towards the end of the estrus cycle will eventually cause a rapid decline in the production ng progesterone since wala namang pregnancy na naganap, and eventually a complete disappearance already of the corpus luteum within a few days ay mag-o-occur na. Okay? Then in another way, the dairy animals are considered to be monotocous. So meaning, they normally giving birth to one young for each gestation period. Okay? So ang tinutukoy ko dito is yung mga dairy cattle and tsaka mga dairy buffaloes. Okay? Therefore, pag sinabi natin na monotocous, from the root word mono, one ovum is produced for each estrous cycle. Ano pa ba? For the appearance, usually for the dairy cow, it is described to be in almond shape, but the shape is usually altered by the growing follicles or yung corpus luteum. However, the size will still vary among the animals, and usually yung mga active na ovaries tend to be larger than the inactive ones. Therefore, if mapapansin ninyo sa picture, the right ovary is larger than the left ovary. And to give you a fact about this one, about 60% of all ovulations come from the right ovary. And as for the components of the ovary, or the ovaries I should say, kasi dalawa yung ovaries sa mga dairy animals natin, specifically sa mga dairy cows natin. These are composed mainly with two, the medulla, which is the central core, and then yung cortex, which is the outer shell. So si medulla, it is composed mainly ng mga blood vessels, nerves, and even connective tissues. Pag si cortex naman, nagkakantain siya ng mga cell and tissue layers associated with ovum and hormone production, which eventually describes the process? It is the oogenesis. Okay? And then second, we have the oviducts, which are also commonly called as fallopian tubes. Okay, so that is very common already. Pag sinabi natin na oviducts, this is also called as the fallopian tubes. Okay, so these are two tubes which carry the eggs from the ovaries to the uterus. So in other way, these are a pair of convoluted na tubes extending from near the ovaries, as you can see in the picture too, and becoming continuous with the tips of the uterine horns. Although if you try to dissect kasi a reproductive system, these are definitely small and difficult to find in a reproductive tract specimen, but they play an important role in fertilization and transportation ng sperm cells and oocytes, or yung ova and spermatozoa. Okay? Both before and after ng fertilization. Then in addition, they are also the site of fertilization and the early cell divisions of the embryo. So in terms of its size, the oviducts are approximately 10 inches long, 1/4 inches in or 1/4 inch in diameter, and lie between each ovary. Kung makikita ninyo dito, it lies between each ovary and tip of the adjacent of uterine horn. So if you could observe kanina sa previous slide ko, nasa taas ng oviduct yung uterine horn, no? Kasi ito is parang nakadaplag dito eh. And then the ovarian end of the oviduct is funnel-shaped in size, which is also known as the infundibulum. So ang ginagawa ni infundibulum ay kinakatch niya yung egg as it is released from the ovary. Okay? Kinakatch niya yung egg from the ovary at ovulation and moves it to the enlarged upper end of the oviduct called as the ampulla. So now, the fertilization occurs here within 12 hours of ovulation. Then after ng ovulation, after fertilization, yung na-fertilized na ovum will eventually be transported sa uterus during a process na pwedeng magtagal ng 3 to 4 days. Then third part of the female reproductive system is the uterus. So dito naman, the uterus is composed primarily of two horns, of which each horn corresponds to a specific ovary and a small body, or yung tinatawag natin na uterine body, just next to the cervix, and eventually a cervix, which is also called as the neck. No? So si uterine body yung palaging target na location for semen deposition during artificial insemination na ginagawa natin. While for the uterine horns, dito na de-develop yung mga naka-attach sa uterine walls na fertilized eggs. Then for the cervix, as you can see in the lower portion na picture, this is a muscular structure na nagfa-function as the main passageway of the sperm. Kasi dito na yung vagina eh. So parang mas maano lang tong cervix. So nagsaserve siya as sperm reservoir. And parang siya yung nag-guard sa mga bacteria and other foreign objects para di makapasok sa uterus during pregnancy through the formation ng isang waxy mucus plug. However, during parturition naman, pag manganganak na yung animal, eventually, the cervix will also act as a part of the birth canal. Kasi manggagaling ito sa uterus. Okay? So to sum up about the uterus, we can consider it that this is a highly specialized organ sa reproductive system ng animal because this is primarily being the adaptation for which it accepts and nourishes the product of consumption from the time na na-implant ito hanggang parturition. Also, ang magandang characteristic din pala, no, before ko makalimutan, ang magandang characteristic din pala ng uterus is kaya niyang mag-undergo ng mga tremendous changes when it comes to pwedeng sa size, pwedeng sa structure, and even sa position, para ma-accommodate niya yung needs ng nasa loob niya, which is the fetus. Then within a couple of weeks of fertilization, yung viable na embryo will become established already sa uterus. Okay? Next portion of the reproductive system is the vagina, which is tubular in shape, thin-walled, and quite elastic. So basically, this is not common naman na sa inyo, which serves as the female organ of copulation. Okay? Nagsaserve siya as the organ during copulation, kaya tinawag siya na female organ of copulation. Since during copulation, yung semen is being deposited here in this organ. Also, since yung vagina is being located between sa opening ng bladder and then the cervix, And sinabi natin kanina na yung cervix is a part of the birth canal. So definitely, si vagina ang nagsiserve as the passageway for the calf or kahit ano man yan na young, no, at birth for the delivery of the fetus. And take note that one of the important functions ng vagina ay it usually serves as a line of defense against invasion sa mga bakterya. However, if unsanitary naman yung housing ng mga animals or di malinis yung mga equipment during insemination, doon nagkakaproblema tayo which could result into vaginal infections. Then lastly, we have the vulva and vestibule. So the vulva, this is the external opening of the reproductive system ng animals and even sa urinary system kasi dito naman lumalabas yung ihi ng mga animals. So if we base from the external anatomy of it, it comprises itong left and right labia. Okay? And if you try to recall yung your ANSI 20 for the external anatomy of different farm animals, the clitoris is just located inside this organ. And ano na ulit ang clitoris? So if sa lalaki is penis, for the females, we do have the clitoris as the sensory and erectile organ. Now for the vulva, one of the important functions niya sa atin is just like to some species, like for example, for the dairy animals, this is important part of the reproductive system since this assists us as animal raisers in detection when they are in heat or estrus, which will be discussed later on as my discussion progresses. Kasi it's very common for us, even when you were in first year or sa mga previous na ANSI subjects natin, ninyo, palaging sinasabi ng teacher ninyo na one of the detection methods pag in-heat yung animal ay titignan nyo lang yung vulva. Okay? Then lastly, we have the vestibule. So we have the vestibule. So si vestibule, this is the portion of the reproductive tract between the vagina and then the vulva. Okay, so basically this is the portion of the female duct system that is common both sa reproductive and urinary system, as I have said a while back. Now, to give you an insight about the female hormone cycle ng mga animals, the image is clear already for you to understand the flow or the importance or roles of the different hormones of the body of the animal. Pero ano nga ba ang importance ng mga hormones nito? Okay? Etong mga hormones kasi ang nagre-regulate and at the same time nagde-develop sa reproductive system. So just like the function of the GnRH or the gonadotrophin releasing hormone in male animals that is being produced by the hypothalamus, si GnRH dito sa female hormone cycle, siya ang responsible in stimulating the pituitary. Okay? Siya yung responsible para ma-stimulate yung pituitary gland. Para pag na-stimulate si pituitary gland, mare-release yung dalawang hormone. Okay? Which are the FSH and then the LH, or the follicle stimulating hormones and the luteinizing hormone. So in female animals, si FSH, from the word itself, follicle stimulating hormone, siya yung nag-i-stimulate sa mga follicles sa ovaries to develop a mature ovum. Kasi if you could remember yung sinabi ko kanina, one of the functions of the ovary is to produce an ova. Okay? And another one, si FSH, trinitrigger din niya yung secretion of estrogen. And ano ulit yung estrogen? Si estrogen yung nagiging dahilan kung bakit nade-develop yung sex organs and secondary sex characteristics ng isang babae na animal para sa kanyang desire to mate. or the receptivity in mating. And once na na-release itong si estrogen, it suppresses already or it suppresses also the production of FSH. And this time, ini-encourage na niya yung production ng LH or the luteinizing hormone by the pituitary gland. Now, once na ma-produce or once na na-produce si LH is responsible now for the follicle to release the egg, which is eto na yung tinatawag natin na ovulation. Also, etong hormone din na to, si LH, ang nagiging dahilan for the development of corpus luteum from the follicle after the egg is being release. Okay? So parang lahat ng mga hormones na to ay konektado. Okay? So kailangan maintindihan ninyo ng mabuti to. Now, as I have said kanina, since si LH ay ini-stimulate niya for the development ng corpus luteum, now the hormone progesterone which is secreted by the corpus luteum will stop. Okay? Will stop the production of FSH and then the LH para ma-prevent yung development ng follicles para walang ma-produce na estrogen na. Kasi if you try to recall it, the progesterone is the main responsible in maintaining the pregnancy of the animals. So if the egg is fertilized, yung CL will stay in place, of which as I have said kanina, progesterone will be produced until such time na mabuo yung fetus. However, papaano naman ang mangyayari? Kaya if the egg, ano naman kaya yung mangyayari if the egg is not fertilized? Definitely, yung reason kung bakit nabubuo yung progesterone will eventually deteriorate, which is the corpus luteum. Kaya if naglaho si CL, then eventually progesterone production will end also. And pag nawala si progesterone, anong mangyayari? Pag nawala si progesterone, GnRH will be released until such time na mauulit-ulit yung cycle. Okay? So I hope na intindihan nyo ng mabuti itong hormone cycle. Although medyo nakakalito kasi they are connected to each other, pero try to understand pa din para ma-appreciate ninyo itong hormone cycle. Then for now, since tapos na tayo sa reproductive parts with the hormone cycle as well, I will now discuss on how the dairy animals reach its puberty, kung saan pwede na silang makipag-mate. So when we say puberty, ano na ulit? So pag sinabi natin na puberty, this indicates that the female has reached already yung tinatawag natin na maturity, which they are already capable in producing offsprings. So the age of puberty varies between breeds of animal and among female animal also with the same breed kasi there is already a variation or diversity naman kaya hindi pare-parehas. Okay? Now let's try to understand the terms like estrus, estrus cycle, estrus length, or the estrus duration. Kasi I believe hanggang ngayon meron pa din or nalilito pa din kayo kung ano ba ang difference ng estrus, ano ang estrus cycle, tsaka ano ang estrus length or estrus duration. Okay? For you to understand na maigi itong mga terms na to. So when we see estrus, this is the term that we use when an animal is in heat or naglalandi. Okay, that is very common. So meaning, the animal is in estrus or in heat. So the term estrus means agarem digi animal. So this is the period during which the female will accept the male for mating or yung tinatawag natin kanina na copulation. So as I've said a while back, estrus just begins when the animal reaches its puberty. But for estrus cycle na term, this is yung, pag sinabi natin na estrus cycle, this is the duration ng pwedeng paglalandi ng animal. Or in the basic analysis, this is the period from estrus to the next estrus. Or in other hand, this is the period of time that female animals can become pregnant. So in many farm animals like the dairy ones, estrus comes every 21 days if the female animals are cycling regularly. Although it could be vary naman to around 12 to 30 days. Okay, so regular cycling means that the animal becomes in heat or receptive for breeding every 18 to 24 days. Pag estrus length naman or estrus duration, pag sinabi natin na ganito, this is the window opportunity for mating. So ito yung duration ng pwedeng maging in heat yung animal. So for example, in dairy cow, it has an average estrus length only of 18 hours. So with a range from, that is in average, pero pwedeng hanggang 10 to 30 hours. So yun yung tinatawag natin na estrus length. Okay? Hence, we have also stages of estrus cycle, which is further divided into 4 portions. We have the proestrus, the estrus, metaestrus, and then the diestrus. Isa-isahin natin. So when we say proestrus, this is characterized by follicular growth. So during this period, the female animal is still not sexually receptive and it usually lasts for 2 days. So tatandaan pag proestrus, follicular growth, so meaning nagsisimula pa lang yung follicular phase ng cycle. Okay? So kindly relate it doon sa hormone cycle na diniscuss ko kanina. Then pag estrus naman, as what I have said kanina, this is the period of sexual receptivity of the female animal, which is under the influence of estrogen, which acts as a primary hormone. So that is for 12 to 18 hours in average. Then kapag metaestrus naman, characterize siya for the development of corpus luteum and production of progesterone. So nag-i-start ng maging pregnant yung animal. And then for the last portion of the estrus cycle, which is the diestrus, dito na yung period which the animal's body determines or detects pregnancy. Okay? And the primary hormone na napoproduce dito is, ano na ulit? It is the progesterone. However, there are some cases na yung animal di nagiging pregnant. So if not pregnant, the animals continue to the proestrus period and back to the normal cycle. But if the animal is pregnant naman, didiretso siya hanggang gestation period or yung time ng pagbubuntis until sa parturition or the act of giving birth. So that's how estrus cycle is being happen in the animal. Now, how do we detect or determine that the animal is in heat? Papaano natin malalaman na naglalandi pala yung animals natin? Okay? Although for this one, this is not already common sa inyo since palagi ninyong na-encounter to simula ng first year pa kayo. Kaya to give you some insights or to give you some recall about the different signs of estrus, we have the following. So sa cattle, carabao, and goat, halos the same lang naman sila, but let's try to focus on the swelling of the vulva and then the reddening of the vulva. So parang reddening lang to, yung sinabi dito na inflamed appearance around the lips of the vulva. This is just only a description for the reddening of the vulva. And then since as I have said a while back sa discussion ko ng parts of the repro sa female, sa vulva ng animal tayo tumitingin as one detection methods when it is in heat. Okay? So nagre-red siya at nagsiswell, nag-e-enlarge siya as well as may mucus discharge. Okay? Hindi ko na to i-discuss isa-isa to give some highlights since ilang beses niyo na itong na-encounter sa lahat ng unsigned subjects ninyo. Siguro ito na lang. Dito sa part ng goat, itong bleating. Ito panigurado yung di kayo familiar. Kaya kinonsider ko na ilagay ito. So pag bleating, ito yung pag diba if you have some goats na alaga ninyo, almost the same lang sila ni mounting other animals. yung way na nagsisigaw yung kambing, like it is crying, yun yung tinatawag natin na bleating. Kasi if you could observe naman, pag naglalandi yung kambing, umiiyak siya. Yun yung tinatawag natin sa activity na to. Okay? Now we are done already with the parts, the estrus and its cycle, the hormone cycle and all. Now the question right now is when to breed. Kailan yung pinaka the best na pwede nating i-mate yung animals natin para 100% na they will get pregnant. Okay? So first, the best time to breed or inseminate, no? So the best time to breed or inseminate is towards the end of its estrus. Okay? Doon yung pinakamagandang period na mag-inseminate ka. For cattle and carabaos naman, just to have a recall, duration of their estrus is about 5 to 36 hours or 18 hours in average. Okay? So if na-observe na natin na in-heat siya in the morning or afternoon, dapat ma-inseminate na siya immediately. If it is still in heat the next morning naman, give the second insemination para siguradong nakakuha siya. Now, for the last slide, I have included itong reproductive failures para to give you some insights for this. So the potential areas of concern for a reproductive failures include yung errors in heat detection, errors in insemination technique, and lack of female animals na fertility. Okay? Or lack of female fertility. Which includes yung, pag sinabi natin na female fertility, nandiyan yung fertilization failure, ano pa ba? Early na embryo loss, and even sa mga abortions. So the first one, let's try to differentiate it. So the first one, which is inaccuracy or errors in heat detection. So this is basically the inaccuracy in heat detection. Okay? So yung inaccuracy in heat detection is easily the most important factor in reproductive failure. So paano nangyayari to? Definitely, the female animals are often bred at the wrong stage of the estrus cycle. Okay? That is one possible na cause. Either they are bred too late following the estrus, or they were not in estrus at all. Okay? For the insemination techniques, these are often overlooked as a source of reproductive failure also. And then 2/3 of all insemination fail to place the same in the body or in the uterus of the animal. And 1/4 of inseminations never reach the uterus at all. And another one, pwede ding mag-fall dito yung improper na semen handling techniques as one of the common sources of reproductive failure. Then another one, or the last one, we have the lack of female fertility in terms of the female animals. Definitely the source of failure of cow fertility that could be easiest to document is yung genital infections like vaginitis or even metritis. Now, ano yung pwede natin gawin for this one para ma-prevent natin or ma-minimize natin yung infertility sa dairy herd natin? Okay? Una, ano ba yung pwede natin gawin dito? Una, to prevent this one, we should breed the female animals at the proper time using highly fertile and properly handled na spermatozoa if we are conducting AI. Pwede ding we can provide optimal transition sa dairy management that allows yung mga animals natin na maibalik rapidly to a positive energy balance. Then ano pa ba? We can also consider sa feeding management. Kailangan pakainin natin yung mga lactating animals natin with a diet that can maximize milk yield and ma-minimize natin yung pag-loss ng body condition score kasi yan yung isa sa mga kinakatakutan natin pag nasa lactating period na yung mga dairy animals natin. Okay? Yung mag-loss yung body condition score. I do hope na you are aware kung ano yung tinatawag or kung ano yung sinasabi ko na body condition score. So yun yung merong hanggang 1 to 5 yun eh. Or 0 pala as it starts. Hanggang sa mapayat or payat hanggang sa mataba. Yun yung sinasabi ko dito na body condition score. Usually ginagamit ito sa swine prod. Okay? And then pwede ding we can perform regular na check-up sa mga animals natin sa reproductive system nila to detect if may uterine infections or even ovarian abnormalities. Bakit natin tina-up tong uterine infections? Kasi palaging konektado si urinary system at saka si reproductive system. Okay? So that would be the end of my discussion for today. I do hope na may natutunan kayo kahit papaano, although hindi na to bago sa inyo. But I do hope na refreshen yung mga minds nyo about the reproductive physiology of the dairy animals. Okay? Thank you for listening.